Colorado Territory, 1868. The mountains loomed indifferent to Wyatt Norton's troubles as he urged his exhausted chestnut mare up the narrow trail. 3 days of hard riding had left man and beast bone-weary, but the posse would still be tracking him. They didn't care that he'd killed in self-defense. In these lawless mountains, a man without connections was guilty until dead. Just a bit further, Penny, he murmured to the horse, patting her lathered neck. We'll find shelter soon enough. At 25, Wyatt had already seen enough violence to last several lifetimes. The war between the states had taken his youth, and the chaotic years since had taught him that the frontier was no place for tenderness. A man survived by keeping his gun oiled, his horse fast, and his heart locked away. Anything else was a luxury he couldn't afford. What Wyatt wanted was simple: to disappear into these mountains, find some remote valley where he could build a small cabin, and live out his days answering to no one. Companionship was a weakness that got men killed. He'd seen it happen too many times: a friend betrayed for bounty money, a partner who drew unwanted attention. Better to be alone than to watch someone else suffer for your mistakes. As Penny labored up the steep incline, Wyatt's thoughts drifted to the life he'd once imagined for himself. A farm like his parents had before the fever took them, perhaps a wife someday, children playing in the yard. But dreams like that belonged to men without blood on their hands, men who hadn't learned how quickly the world could turn cruel. The trail narrowed as it curved around a granite outcropping, and Wyatt's hand instinctively moved to the Colt revolver on his hip. The dense pines provided too much cover for ambush. His shoulders tensed as he scanned the surrounding forest, ears straining for any sound that didn't belong. That's when he heard it: water splashing over rocks. The sound promised relief for both him and Penny. He nudged the mare forward, following the musical trickle until the path suddenly opened onto a small clearing. Wyatt pulled Penny to a halt, his breath catching in his throat. Before him lay a sheltered valley, hidden by towering cliffs on 3 sides. A crystalline stream cut through verdant grass, and beyond it, impossibly, sprawled a garden bursting with color. Neat rows of vegetables grew alongside flowering plants he couldn't name, their vibrant hues almost shocking against the rugged mountain backdrop. But it was the woman tending the plants who truly stole his breath. She moved with graceful purpose among the garden rows, her chestnut brown hair falling in loose waves down her back. She wore a simple blue calico dress that had been mended several times, but was clean and well cared for. When she straightened and turned at the sound of his approach, Wyatt felt something in his chest constrict. She couldn't be more than 20, with features that might have belonged on a porcelain doll: high cheekbones, full lips, and large eyes that widened in alarm at the sight of him. For a moment, they simply stared at each other across the clearing. Then she bolted, dropping her basket of herbs as she fled toward a small cabin partially hidden among the trees. "Wait," Wyatt called, dismounting Penny in one fluid motion. "I mean no harm." But the woman had already disappeared inside the cabin, and Wyatt cursed under his breath. Of course she'd run. He probably looked like death warmed over, trailed dust coating his clothes, 3 days of stubble darkening his jaw, and the hard, wary look that had become his permanent expression since the war. He approached slowly, leaving Penny to drink from the stream. The cabin was sturdy but modest, with smoke rising from a stone chimney. A handful of chickens scratched in a small pen nearby, and herbs hung drying from the porch rafters. "Ma'am," he called, stopping a respectful distance from the door. "I apologize for startling you. I've been riding hard for days and didn't expect to find anyone up here." Silence answered him. "I'm just looking for water for my horse and maybe a place to rest for a spell before moving on. I've got coffee and jerky I'm willing to share in exchange." The door opened a crack, and a rifle barrel poked through the opening. "This is private property, mister. State your business and then be on your way." "Name's Wyatt Norton," he said, carefully keeping his hands visible. "I'm headed deeper into the mountains. Got some men following me who don't care much for the truth, only what bounty they might collect." The door opened wider, revealing the woman's face, suspicious but curious. The rifle remained steady in her hands. She held it like someone who knew how to use it. "You're running from the law?" she asked, her voice surprisingly melodious despite its edge. "No, ma'am. Running from men who think they are the law." Wyatt gestured to his mare. "My horse needs rest, and so do I. I give you my word I'll be gone by morning." She studied him for a long moment. Those remarkable eyes, green as spring leaves, he now saw, taking his measure. Whatever she found must have satisfied her, because she lowered the rifle slightly. One night, she said firmly, "You can water your horse and rest in the lean-to behind the cabin. But I'll be keeping this rifle close, Mr. Norton. I wouldn't expect otherwise, miss." She hesitated. Dahlia Osborne. "Thank you, Miss Osborne. Your kindness won't be forgotten." As Wyatt led Penny around to the small shelter behind the cabin, he couldn't help but wonder what a young woman was doing alone in this remote valley. The garden spoke of years of careful tending, and the cabin showed signs of long habitation. Yet the isolation would drive most people to madness. Perhaps, like him, she had reasons to avoid civilization. After settling Penny with fresh water and a small portion of oats from his dwindling supplies, Wyatt washed up at the stream. The cold water revived him somewhat, washing away layers of trail dust and allowing him to see the true beauty of this hidden valley. The garden was even more impressive upon closer inspection. Neat rows of vegetables interspersed with herbs and flowers that seemed to serve some purpose beyond mere decoration. Stone-lined paths wound between the beds, and a small orchard of apple trees grew along one edge. It was a place of abundance and care, seemingly untouched by the harshness that defined the frontier. When he returned to the front of the cabin, Dahlia was waiting on the porch, rifle still in hand, but no longer aimed at him. She'd tied her hair back with a blue ribbon that matched her dress. "Your garden is remarkable," Wyatt said, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. A flicker of pride crossed her face. "It's taken years to coax it from the earth. The growing season is short up here." "Are you alone, Miss Osborne?" Her expression hardened. "That's not your concern, Mr. Norton." "No disrespect intended. It's just unusual to find anyone living this remote, let alone a young woman by herself. Perhaps I prefer the company of mountains to men." She nodded toward a small fire pit at the side of the cabin. "You can build your fire there if you wish to cook. There's a pot of stew inside. I'll bring you some, but you'll eat out here." Wyatt nodded, accepting her terms. Trust came hard on the frontier, especially for those with secrets. And Dahlia Osborne, he was certain, had secrets aplenty. As darkness fell, they sat on opposite sides of the small fire. True to her word, Dahlia had brought him a bowl of rabbit stew thick with vegetables from her garden. It was the finest meal he'd had in months, rich with flavors he'd forgotten existed during his hard travel. "This is delicious," he said, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "You've mastered more than gardening, Miss Osborne." "Dahlia," she corrected him, her expression softening slightly in the firelight. "If you're going to eat my food, you might as well use my given name." "Dahlia, then. How long have you been up here?" She poked at the fire with a stick. "Almost 5 years now. Since the war ended." Something flickered in her eyes. "Yes. You came alone?" "No." The single word held volumes, and Wyatt knew better than to press further. Instead, he asked about the garden, and for the first time, her face truly animated. She spoke of the difficulties of mountain gardening, of the herbs she grew for medicines, of the flowers that attracted bees for honey. Knowledge gleamed in her eyes, passion in her voice. "My mother was a healer," she explained. "She taught me about plants, which could heal, which could harm. People used to come from miles around when they took ill or had injuries the doctor couldn't fix. And now?" Wyatt asked. "Now I heal only myself." She looked at him directly. "And occasional strangers who appear uninvited." Wyatt chuckled despite himself. "I appreciate the stew, though I wouldn't call a scratch on my arm in need of healing." "I noticed you favoring it when you dismounted," Dahlia said matter-of-factly. "Branch catch you on the trail?" "Bullet grazed me 3 days back." "It's nothing." She rose abruptly. "Bullet wounds, even grazes, can fester. Wait here." Before he could protest, she disappeared into the cabin, returning moments later with a small wooden box. She knelt beside him, close enough that he could smell lavender on her skin. "Show me." Something in her tone brooked no argument. Wyatt rolled up his sleeve to reveal the angry red line across his upper arm. It wasn't deep, but it hadn't closed properly, and the edges looked red and irritated. "Nothing," he says, Dahlia muttered, opening her box of supplies. With gentle fingers, she cleaned the wound with a solution that stung like fire. Wyatt hissed, but didn't pull away. "Who shot you?" she asked as she worked. "Man named Thornton. Claims I stole his horse." Did you? Wyatt met her gaze steadily. No. Won her fair in a poker game. But Thornton's the type who doesn't like losing, especially to a younger man. When I refused to give Penny back, he pulled his gun. I was faster. You killed him. He's alive. His pride's wounded worse than his shoulder. But his friends didn't take kindly to it, and the local sheriff owes Thornton favors. Dahlia's hands stilled momentarily. So you ran. Seemed wiser than swinging from a rope. He watched her apply a poultice of crushed herbs to his wound. You're good at this. I've had practice. She began wrapping clean cloth around his arm. Too much practice. When she finished, their eyes met, and for a moment, something electric passed between them. Dahlia pulled back first, clearing her throat and gathering her supplies. Keep it dry. I'll change the dressing tomorrow before you leave. Thank you. Wyatt hesitated. May I ask you something, Dahlia? She nodded cautiously. How does someone so young end up alone in a place like this? Her lips pressed into a thin line. The same way anyone does. One step at a time, with necessity pushing from behind. She stood, clutching her medicine box. Get some rest, Mr. Norton. Morning comes early in the mountains. As she walked away, Wyatt called after her. Wyatt. If I'm to call you Dahlia, then I'm Wyatt to you. She paused at the cabin door. Good night, Wyatt. That night, sleeping in the lean-to with Penny's gentle breathing nearby, Wyatt dreamed of green eyes and gardens blooming impossibly among rocky peaks. Morning brought rain, a gentle, persistent drizzle that turned the distant mountains into ghostly silhouettes. Wyatt woke to the smell of coffee and the soft sounds of Dahlia moving around the garden, covering delicate plants with oilcloth despite the weather. He stepped from the lean-to, rolling his shoulder to test his wounded arm. The pain had subsided to a dull throb, the inflammation noticeably reduced. Your medicine works wonders, he called as he approached her. Dahlia straightened, raindrops clinging to her eyelashes. Today she wore a brown skirt and white blouse, with a woolen shawl pulled around her shoulders against the chill. Herbs can heal most things, she replied, if you know how to use them. And what about the things herbs can't heal? Wyatt asked, helping her secure a corner of oilcloth that had come loose. Her eyes met his, something vulnerable flickering in their depths before being carefully shuttered away. Those we learn to live with. The poignancy in her voice resonated with Wyatt's own buried pain. Before he could respond, a distant sound caught his attention, horses moving through the forest below. Dahlia heard it too, her head snapping toward the trail. Are those your pursuers? Possibly. Wyatt moved quickly to the edge of the clearing, peering through the rain. I need to go. No. Dahlia grabbed his arm. The trail will be muddy, treacherous. They'll track you easily. I can't stay here. I won't bring trouble to your door. Her grip tightened. There's another way. A hunting path my father showed me that leads deeper into the mountains. They won't find it, especially in this rain. Wyatt hesitated, torn between the need to flee and reluctance to leave this unexpected sanctuary. Why would you help me? Because I know what it's like to be hunted for something that wasn't your fault. Her words came out in a rush, as though she hadn't meant to reveal so much. The sound of horses grew closer. Show me, Wyatt decided. They moved with urgent purpose, Dahlia gathering food and medical supplies, while Wyatt saddled Penny. The rain intensified, providing cover as Dahlia led him behind the cabin, past a small cave, and onto a nearly invisible path that wound upward through dense forest. Follow this until you reach a split birch, she instructed. Take the left fork and keep the morning sun at your back. It will lead you to a high meadow where few men ever go. Come with me, Wyatt said, the words surprising him as much as they clearly surprised her. Those men might question you when they find your homestead. Dahlia shook her head. I can handle myself. They'll have no reason to suspect I've helped you. Dahlia, go, Wyatt. She pressed a small packet into his hand. Medicine for your arm. Change the dressing tonight. Their fingers touched, lingered. Then the sound of voices echoed from the direction of the trail, and Dahlia stepped back. Thank you, Wyatt said softly. She nodded once, then turned and slipped away through the rain, back toward her garden and the approaching danger. The path proved as challenging as it looked. Narrow, steep, and slick with mud. Penny struggled in places, but the mare was sure-footed and determined. Wyatt's thoughts remained with Dahlia as they climbed higher into the mountains. What had she meant about being hunted? What was she hiding in that remote valley? By late afternoon, the rain had stopped, though water still dripped from every leaf and branch. Wyatt reached the split birch Dahlia had mentioned and took the left fork as instructed. The trail grew even fainter, sometimes disappearing altogether, but he pressed on, trusting her directions. As dusk approached, the forest thinned, giving way to the promised meadow. Alpine flowers dotted the expanse of grass, and a small lake glimmered in the center, fed by snowmelt from the peaks above. It was beautiful, isolated, and safe. Yet Wyatt felt hollow as he made camp alone at the meadow's edge. For the first time in years, he found himself longing for company. Not just any company, hers. One day had been enough to crack the armor he'd built so carefully around his heart. That night, as he changed his bandage using the herbs Dahlia had provided, Wyatt made a decision. He would return to her valley once he was certain Thornton's men had moved on. Just to check that she was safe, he told himself. Just to thank her properly. But deep down, he knew the truth. Something about Dahlia Osborne had awakened a long-dormant part of him, the part that remembered how to hope. 3 days passed in the high meadow. Wyatt hunted, fished in the lake, and explored the surrounding terrain. But always, his thoughts returned to the hidden valley and its beautiful keeper. On the 4th morning, he saddled Penny and began the careful descent. The sun had dried the trail, making travel easier, and by midday, he recognized the landmarks Dahlia had pointed out. Anticipation quickened his pulse as he approached the final stretch that would bring him back to her garden. The sound of gunfire stopped him cold. 3 shots in quick succession, then silence. Wyatt drew his Colt and urged Penny forward, moving as quietly as possible through the trees. As the clearing came into view, his blood turned to ice. 2 men on horseback circled Dahlia's cabin. Another lay motionless on the ground near the garden. Dahlia herself stood on the porch, rifle raised, her blue dress torn at the shoulder and dirt smeared across one cheek. "Last chance, woman," one of the mounted men shouted. "Tell us where Norton went, or we burn this place to the ground." "I told you, I haven't seen anyone in weeks." Dahlia's voice rang out, steady despite her obvious fear. "Your friend there didn't believe me either. Now leave my property." The second rider spat on the ground. "Thornton ain't gonna like coming all this way for nothing. Maybe we should take something back to him." He leered at Dahlia. Or someone. Wyatt had heard enough. Moving to a better position, he took careful aim and fired a shot that kicked up dirt near the second rider's horse. The animal reared in panic, nearly unseating its rider. "Next one goes between your eyes," Wyatt called, emerging from the tree line with his revolver trained on the men. "Back away from the lady." "Norton." The first rider turned his horse, reaching for his gun. Wyatt's second shot knocked the weapon from the man's hand. "I wouldn't." "You killed Jed," the second rider accused, gesturing toward the body near the garden. "No, I did," Dahlia said coldly. When he tried to force his way inside, the riders exchanged glances, calculating their odds. Wyatt kept his gun steady. "Thornton will hear about this," the first rider warned, cradling his injured hand. "Tell him poker debts are meant to be paid, not collected at gunpoint," Wyatt replied. "Now ride out, and don't look back." The men hesitated only briefly before turning their horses toward the trail. Wyatt kept his weapon trained on them until they disappeared from view, then rushed to Dahlia. "Are you hurt?" he asked, taking in her disheveled appearance. She lowered her rifle, adrenaline draining from her face. "Just scratched when he grabbed my dress." "Why did you come back?" "I couldn't stay away," Wyatt admitted simply. "I was worried about you." Something in Dahlia's expression crumpled, and suddenly she was in his arms, her face pressed against his chest. Wyatt held her close, feeling her slight body tremble. "I thought they might kill me," she whispered, "when they found your horse's tracks leading away from here. I'm sorry. I never meant to bring danger to you." She pulled back enough to look up at him. "Why did you really come back, Wyatt?" The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Wyatt brushed a strand of hair from her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "Because in one day, you made me remember what it feels like to want something more than just survival." The truth fell from his lips before he could reconsider. "Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you." Dahlia's eyes widened, a flush spreading across her cheeks. For a moment, he thought she might step away. Instead, she reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "I've been alone so long," she whispered. "You don't have to be." Wyatt covered her hand with his own. "Neither do I." The moment stretched between them, fragile and charged with possibility. Then Dahlia's eyes shifted to something over his shoulder, and her expression changed to one of alarm. "The body," she said, pulling away. "We need to." "I've never." Reality crashed back. A dead man lay in her garden, and two others had ridden away with vengeance in their hearts. "I'll take care of it," Wyatt assured her. "But then we should leave. They'll be back, possibly with Thornton himself." Fear flickered across Dahlia's face. "Leave? This is my home, my garden. Everything I have is here." "I know." Wyatt took her hands in his. "But it's not safe anymore. Not for a while. We can come back when this is settled." "We?" The word held both hope and skepticism. "If you'll have me," Wyatt said, suddenly uncertain. "I don't have much to offer except my protection and my word that I'll see you safely through this." Dahlia looked around at her garden, the cabin she'd built with her own hands, the life she'd carved from wilderness. Then her gaze returned to Wyatt. "There's a box under the floorboard beneath my bed," she said. "Letters, a photograph, and a leather pouch. If we're leaving, I need those." Wyatt nodded, relief washing through him. "Pack what you can carry. I'll take care of our visitor, and then we'll go." As Dahlia gathered her belongings, Wyatt buried the dead man at the forest's edge, marking the grave with stones. By the time he finished, Dahlia had packed 2 saddlebags with essentials, clothes, medicines, seeds from her garden, and the mysterious box from beneath the floorboards. "Where will we go?" she asked as they prepared to leave. "The high meadow first," Wyatt said. "Then west, perhaps to the Colorado River country. I have a friend there who owes me a favor." Dahlia mounted the old mule she kept for hauling supplies, taking one last look at her garden. In the late afternoon light, the flowers seemed to glow, a riot of color against the green backdrop of the mountains. "It will be here when we return," Wyatt said gently. She nodded, squaring her shoulders. "Let's go." They traveled until darkness made the trail too dangerous, making camp in a sheltered hollow. As they sat beside their small fire, Dahlia finally spoke of what had brought her to the mountains. "My father was a Union officer," she began, her voice soft in the darkness. "After the war, he couldn't settle back into civilian life. The things he'd seen, done, they haunted him. Mother suggested we move west, start fresh away from the memories." She poked at the fire with a stick. "We found that valley by accident when our wagon broke an axle on the main trail. Father said it was a sign, this hidden place where no one would find us. We built the cabin, started the garden." "What happened to them?" Wyatt asked gently. Dahlia's eyes reflected the firelight. "Mother took fever the second winter. Nothing I could do would save her. Father, he changed after that. Drank more. Talked to people who weren't there." She swallowed hard. "One morning, I found him in the garden. He'd used his service revolver." "God, Dahlia, you were alone up there since then?" She nodded. "I was 19. Couldn't face going back to civilization, facing questions. So I stayed, expanded the garden, learned to survive. Occasionally traders would pass through. I'd exchange medicines for supplies. But mostly it was just me. That's why the garden is so important to you," Wyatt realized. "It's their legacy. And my survival." She looked at him directly. "What about you? What drove you to a life on the move?" Wyatt stared into the flames. "I was 16 when the war started. Lied about my age to enlist because I thought it would be a grand adventure." He laughed bitterly. "By 18, I'd seen enough death to last lifetimes. When it ended, I drifted west like so many others, taking whatever work I could find. And finding trouble," Dahlia added softly. "Trouble finds me," he corrected. "But yes, I've made my share of mistakes. Trusted people I shouldn't have. Learned that out here, a man's word means little against his ambition. So you decided to trust no one." "Until now," Wyatt admitted, meeting her gaze across the fire. "Until you." The silence between them hummed with unspoken possibilities. "We should sleep," Dahlia finally said, though her eyes lingered on his. "Tomorrow will be a long day." As they settled on opposite sides of the fire, Wyatt wondered at the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. 2 solitary souls finding each other in the vastness of the frontier. Their journey to the high meadow took most of the next day, slowed by Dahlia's elderly mule and the need to cover their tracks. They arrived as the sun began its descent, bathing the alpine landscape in golden light. "It's beautiful," Dahlia breathed, taking in the wildflower-strewn expanse and the crystalline lake. We'll be safe here for a few days, Wyatt said, helping her down from the mule. Long enough to decide our next move. They made camp near the lake, and as darkness fell, Dahlia unwrapped the small wooden box she'd rescued from her cabin. With hesitant fingers, she opened it, revealing a collection of letters tied with faded ribbon, a tintype photograph, and a small leather pouch. My parents, she explained, showing Wyatt the photograph of a stern-looking officer in Union blue standing beside a gentle-faced woman in a dark dress. Taken just before we left for the West. You have your mother's eyes, Wyatt observed. Dahlia smiled faintly, then turned her attention to the leather pouch. And this is why we could never go back east. She loosened the drawstring, tipping the contents into her palm. Gold coins gleamed in the firelight, at least a dozen, along with a heavy signet ring bearing a military crest. My father took these when the war ended, she said quietly. Union paymasters' funds meant for soldiers' wages. He was supposed to deliver them to headquarters, but he just kept writing. She looked up at Wyatt, her expression pained. He wasn't a thief before the war. It changed him, broke something inside him. The war broke many men, Wyatt said gently. I only learned about it after Mother died. He confessed everything during one of his drinking bouts. Dahlia returned the coins to the pouch. He was convinced the army would find us, hang him for theft. That fear drove him to the bottle, and eventually, to his end. Wyatt finished when she couldn't. She nodded, closing the box. I kept it hidden all these years, not sure what to do with it. I couldn't spend it, too suspicious for a woman alone. But I couldn't bring myself to throw it away either. It's enough to start a new life somewhere, Wyatt noted. Legitimate money for a homestead, supplies. Blood money, Dahlia corrected. Stolen from men who earned it. Wyatt considered this. Or a second chance, if used right. Your father's mistake doesn't have to define your future, Dahlia. She looked at him with sudden intensity. Is that what you believe? That our pasts don't define us? The question struck at the heart of Wyatt's own struggles. The violence he'd seen and committed. The solitary existence he'd chosen out of fear rather than desire. I'm starting to, he said honestly. Meeting you. It's made me question things I thought were certain. Like what? Like whether a man has to face this frontier alone. Whether there's room out here for something more than just survival. He met her gaze steadily. Whether someone like me deserves a second chance. Dahlia moved closer, until they sat side by side before the fire. And what have you decided? I'm still deciding, Wyatt admitted. But I know I don't want to leave you. Her hand found his in the darkness, fingers intertwining. Then don't. The days that followed took on a dreamlike quality as they settled into life in the high meadow. Wyatt constructed a simple shelter of branches and canvas, while Dahlia discovered the meadow's bounty of medicinal plants. They fished in the lake, hunted in the surrounding forest, and gradually the wariness between them gave way to something deeper. Each night brought them closer. Conversations lasting until the fire burned low, shared stories of their pasts, tentative touches that lingered longer each time. Wyatt found himself smiling more than he had in years, laughing at Dahlia's dry observations about wildlife and her determined efforts to start a small garden plot near their camp. On their 7th night in the meadow, as they sat watching stars emerge above the mountains, Dahlia asked the question that had been building between them. What happens when it's safe to leave here? Where do we go? Wyatt had been considering this very question. I have a friend who settled near the Colorado River, good cattle country. He's offered me partnership before. A ranch. Dahlia's voice held surprise. Before the war, that's what I wanted. Land of my own. Cattle, maybe horses. Wyatt gazed at the distant peaks. Never seemed possible after. Always moving, looking over my shoulder. And now I'm thinking it might be. He turned to her. If you wanted that too. The implication hung in the air between them. Not just a destination, but a future together. I've never lived anywhere but mountains, Dahlia said softly. Never had anyone but myself to consider since my parents died. Is that a no? Wyatt asked, his heart sinking. It's an observation. She met his gaze directly. I need to learn ranching. And people. I'm not used to being around others. We'd learn together, Wyatt said, hope rising. And ranch country has its share of space for those who want it. Dahlia was quiet for a long moment. There's something I need to know first, Wyatt. Something important. Anything. The men you've killed, not just in the war, but after. Do they haunt you? The question caught him off guard with its directness. Yes, he admitted. Not all in the same way. Some deserve their fate more than others. But I remember every face. And do you regret them? The necessity, yes. The act itself. Wyatt chose his words carefully. When it was truly self-defense, no. When there was another way I could have chosen, those are the ones that wake me at night. Dahlia nodded, seemingly satisfied with his honesty. My father couldn't live with what the war made him do. It consumed him until there was nothing left of the man he used to be. I'm not your father, Dahlia. No, she agreed, her hand finding his. You're stronger than he was. You're still fighting to build something, not just running from what's behind. Before Wyatt could respond, a sound from the forest edge caught his attention, the distinctive crack of a twig under a heavy boot. His hand moved instinctively to his revolver. Get behind me, he whispered, rising slowly to his feet. Dahlia complied without question, reaching for the rifle they kept nearby. Norton, a voice called from the darkness. I know you're there. Got your tracks coming up to this meadow clear as day. Thornton. Wyatt's jaw tightened as he recognized the voice. Step into the light where I can see you, Wyatt called back. A figure emerged from the trees, a heavy-set man with a graying beard and expensive clothes now stained from hard travel. He held a shotgun casually in the crook of his arm, and Wyatt could see at least 2 more men positioned at the edge of the clearing. Thought you could run forever, boy? Thornton asked, his tone almost conversational. After shooting me and killing my men? Your men tried to kill the lady, Wyatt replied evenly. As for you, that was a fair fight after you cheated at cards. Thornton spat on the ground. I came to collect what's mine, my horse and satisfaction for my shoulder. The horse is mine, one fair. As for your shoulder, seems it healed just fine. Not the point. Thornton's eyes shifted to Dahlia, and a slow smile spread across his face. Well now, what do we have here? The mountain which my boys mentioned? Seems she's taken quite a shine to you, Norton. Leave her out of this, Wyatt said, his voice hardening. This is between you and me. Too late for that. She killed one of my men. Dahlia stepped forward, ignoring Wyatt's attempt to keep her behind him. He tried to force his way into my home. I defended myself, as any woman would. Thornton laughed. Got spirit, this one. Maybe I'll take her along with the horse when we're done here. A cold fury rose in Wyatt's chest. You'll do no such thing. And who's going to stop me? You? 3 of us against the 2 of you, and one's just a woman. This woman can shoot, Dahlia said coldly, raising her rifle. And I rarely miss. Tension crackled in the air as they faced each other across the firelit clearing. Wyatt calculated their odds. Not good, but not impossible if they were quick and accurate. There's another option, Wyatt said, an idea forming. One that doesn't end with more dead men on either side. Thornton raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. A trade. Wyatt nodded toward Penny, grazing nearby. The mare for our free passage. You get what you came for, and we all walk away. Wyatt, no, Dahlia whispered. Penny's yours fair and square. Your life is worth more than any horse, he murmured back. Thornton considered the offer, eyes narrowed. Horse and whatever gold you're carrying. Don't look surprised. Word gets around about a woman living alone in the mountains with no visible means of support. Figured there must be something valuable up in that cabin of hers. Dahlia tensed beside Wyatt. The stolen Union gold would mean prison, or worse if Thornton recognized what it was. We have some coins, Wyatt said carefully. Family, heirloom jewelry. Nothing that would interest a man of your means. I'll be the judge of that, Thornton replied, gesturing with his shotgun. The pouch. Toss it over. Dahlia and Wyatt exchanged glances. They were trapped, with few options and fewer allies. Do it, Wyatt said softly. It's just money. With reluctant hands, Dahlia retrieved the leather pouch from their supplies, hesitating as she held it. This belonged to my father, she said, looking directly at Thornton. It's all I have left of him. Touching, Thornton sneered. The pouch. Now, Dahlia took a step forward, then suddenly stumbled, dropping the pouch. Gold coins scattered across the ground, glinting in the firelight. As Thornton and his men instinctively looked down, Wyatt made his move. In one fluid motion, he drew and fired, hitting Thornton's shotgun and knocking it from his hands. Dahlia recovered just as quickly, firing her rifle toward one of the men at the tree line, forcing him to dive for cover. Run, Wyatt shouted, pulling Dahlia toward the far side of the clearing as Thornton's remaining man opened fire. They sprinted across the meadow, bullets kicking up dirt at their heels. The darkness beyond the firelight swallowed them as they reached the trees, plunging deeper into the forest. The horses, Dahlia gasped as they ran. We'll circle back when we can, Wyatt promised, leading her along a rocky path where their footprints wouldn't show. They ran until their lungs burned, climbing higher into unfamiliar territory. Behind them, shouts echoed as Thornton and his men gave chase. The night was clear, the moon bright enough to cast shadows, offering both illumination for their flight and exposure to their pursuers. Finally, they reached a rocky outcropping that offered some shelter. Dahlia collapsed against the stone, breathing hard. Wyatt crouched beside her, listening for sounds of pursuit. "The gold," she whispered. "It's gone. Better lost than used as evidence against you," Wyatt replied. "That was quick thinking, dropping it like that." "Not thinking. I truly stumbled." A small, desperate laugh escaped her. "All these years hiding it, and now it's scattered across a mountain meadow." "Good riddance," Wyatt said firmly. "It was your father's burden, not yours." Dahlia looked at him in the moonlight, her expression clearing as if a weight had indeed been lifted. "You're right. I've been carrying his guilt along with the gold." She touched Wyatt's face. "But I've lost Penny too." "Your horse is just a horse," he finished. "We'll get another when we reach my friend's ranch." "You still want that?" "After all this?" "More than ever." Wyatt took her hand, pressing it against his heart. "Dahlia, I've spent years believing the frontier was no place for anything soft or gentle. That a man out here had to be as hard as the land itself to survive. And now I know better. You've shown me that even in the harshest places, something beautiful can grow." He smiled slightly. "Like your garden in the mountains." Distant voices interrupted the moment. Thornton's men, moving through the forest below. "We need to keep moving," Wyatt said reluctantly. "There's a pass ahead that leads to the western valleys. If we can reach it by dawn." Dahlia nodded, determination replacing exhaustion in her eyes. "Then let's go." They traveled through the night, following game trails and dry creek beds, always moving west and always listening for pursuers. As dawn broke, they reached the pass, a narrow gap between towering peaks that promised escape to the lands beyond. But as they approached, a shot rang out, the bullet striking rock near Wyatt's head. "Thought you'd outrun us." Thornton's voice echoed from behind a boulder. "Might have, if not for that distinctive limp you've developed, Norton." Wyatt glanced down, noticing for the first time the blood seeping through his pant leg. Sometime during their flight, a bullet had grazed his calf. Adrenaline had masked the pain until now. "Stay behind me," he whispered to Dahlia, drawing his revolver. "No," she replied, raising her rifle. Together, another shot ricocheted nearby. They were pinned down with the pass tantalizingly close, but still out of reach. "I just want the woman and the rest of the gold," Thornton called. "Give those up, and you can limp away with your life, Norton." "Never," Wyatt called back, his voice steady despite the desperate situation. "The lady stays with me. Then you'll both die here." Dahlia touched Wyatt's arm, her expression resolute. "I have an idea. When I give the signal, run for the pass. I won't leave you. Trust me," she said, with such conviction that he found himself nodding. Dahlia closed her eyes briefly, then raised her rifle and fired 3 rapid shots toward a snowpack clinging to the slope above where Thornton's voice had come from. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low rumble that quickly built to a roar, the snow began to move. Wyatt watched in amazement as a small avalanche cascaded down the mountainside, directly toward Thornton's position. "Now!" Dahlia cried, pulling Wyatt to his feet. They ran for the pass as shouts of alarm rose behind them, followed by the tremendous sound of snow and rock thundering down the slope. They didn't look back, pushing through the narrow gap and continuing down the western side until the sounds of destruction faded. Only when they reached a sheltered grove did they stop, collapsing to the ground in exhaustion. Wyatt stared at Dahlia in wonder. "How did you know?" She smiled weakly. "My father taught me about avalanche conditions. That snowpack was already precarious, just needed encouragement." "You're remarkable," Wyatt said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Absolutely remarkable. Did it work?" "Are they?" "I don't know. But even if they survived, they won't follow us further. Not with that leg of mine, leaving a trail of blood to follow." Dahlia's attention immediately shifted to his wound. She tore a strip from her petticoat and bandaged his calf, her touch gentle but efficient. "We need to find shelter, clean this properly," she said, professional concern replacing the exhilaration of their escape. Wyatt reached out, tilting her face up to his. "We will. But first." He kissed her then, softly at first, then with increasing urgency as she responded, her arms winding around his neck. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "I've wanted to do that since the first day," Wyatt confessed, resting his forehead against hers. "Why didn't you?" "Wasn't sure you'd welcome it. Wasn't sure I deserved to." Dahlia smiled, her eyes bright with emotion. "I would have. And you do." They made their way slowly down the western slopes, Wyatt leaning on Dahlia when his injured leg threatened to give out. The land changed as they descended, pine forests giving way to more open country, with distant glimpses of river valleys below. By nightfall, they reached a small hunter's cabin, abandoned but sound. Dahlia set to work cleaning Wyatt's wound properly, using plants she'd gathered along the way. "It's not deep," she pronounced after examination. "Should heal clean if we keep it tended." "Good," Wyatt replied. "Because I'm planning to stand beside you at the earliest opportunity." Dahlia looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" "I mean to marry you, Dahlia Osborne. If you'll have me." The words came easily, as natural as breathing. "I know it's sudden. I know we've known each other barely 2 weeks. But in that time, you've changed everything I thought I knew about myself and what I want from life." She sat back on her heels, expression unreadable. "You can't mean that." "I've never meant anything more." Wyatt took her hand. "I've spent years running from connection, convinced that caring for someone would only lead to pain. But these past days with you, even with all the danger, have been the most alive I've felt since before the war." Tears gathered in Dahlia's eyes. "I've been alone so long. I'm not sure I remember how not to be." "We'll learn together," Wyatt promised. "Day by day, figuring it out as we go. That's all anyone does, really." A tear slipped down her cheek. "What about my garden? My valley? We'll go back someday, when it's safe. Or start a new garden wherever we settle. Your knowledge is too valuable to be hidden away in the mountains." Dahlia was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Yes, yes, yes, I'll marry you, Wyatt Norton." A smile broke through her tears. "Yes, I'll build a new life with you." Wyatt pulled her into his arms, his heart fuller than he'd ever thought possible. In this woman, this remarkable, resilient woman, he'd found not just a companion, but a future he'd stopped believing was possible. 3 weeks later, they arrived at the Colorado River country. Wyatt's leg healed enough for walking, though he still carried a stick for support. They'd traded labor for rides along the way, working their way west through small settlements and isolated homesteads. William Garrett's ranch sprawled across a picturesque valley, cattle grazing on lush grassland bounded by distant mesas. The ranch house itself was modest but well-built, with a wide porch and a garden that immediately caught Dahlia's attention. Garrett himself rode out to meet them, a weathered man in his 40s with kind eyes and a ready smile. "Wyatt Norton, as I live and breathe. When I got your message from the trading post, I could hardly believe it." The men embraced, then Wyatt turned to Dahlia. "Will, this is my fiancée, Dahlia Osborne. Dahlia, this is William Garrett, finest cattleman west of the Rockies and the only officer I ever served under worth following." "Miss Osborne," Garrett said, tipping his hat. "Any woman who'd tie herself to this rascal must be either remarkably patient or slightly touched in the head." Dahlia laughed, the sound bright in the afternoon sun. "Perhaps a bit of both, Mr. Garrett." "Will, please. Come inside, both of you. Rebecca will want to meet you." Rebecca Garrett proved to be a warm, practical woman who immediately took to Dahlia, showing her the garden she'd established and the small still room where she prepared medicines for the ranch hands and neighboring homesteaders. That evening, over a hearty dinner, Wyatt and Garrett discussed the possibility of partnership. The ranch was growing, Garrett explained, with more cattle arriving each month and new grazing lands being claimed. "I need a foreman I can trust," he told Wyatt. "Someone who can manage men and cattle both. The position comes with that parcel we discussed years ago, the one with the creek running through it." "It's perfect," Wyatt said, glancing at Dahlia. "Room for cattle, horses, and a garden that would make Eden jealous." "And a house?" Dahlia asked, practical as always. We'd help you build it, Rebecca assured her. That's how it's done out here. Everyone pitches in. Later, standing on the porch under a sky ablaze with stars, Wyatt held Dahlia close. What do you think? He asked. Could you be happy here? Dahlia looked out over the moonlit valley, then up at the man beside her. I think I could be happy anywhere, as long as I can put roots down and have you beside me. You'll have both, Wyatt promised. And more. They were married 2 weeks later, a simple ceremony in the Garrett's front room with a circuit-riding preacher officiating. Dahlia wore a new dress of pale blue, with wildflowers in her hair. Wyatt stood tall beside her, his wounded leg almost healed, his heart completely so. By winter, their own cabin was finished, a sturdy structure on the creekside parcel Garrett had offered. It wasn't large, but it was solidly built, with wide windows that let in light and a stone fireplace that warmed the main room. Outside, Dahlia had already begun preparing soil for a spring garden, incorporating the growing techniques she'd developed in her mountain valley. On Christmas Eve, as snow dusted the land outside, they sat before their fire, Wyatt's arms around Dahlia as she leaned back against his chest. Do you ever miss it? He asked. Your garden in the mountains? Dahlia considered the question. Sometimes. The solitude had its own beauty, but what I created there was born of necessity and grief. She turned to face him. What we're building here comes from choice and hope. That makes all the difference. Wyatt kissed her gently. You've taught me that a man doesn't have to face the frontier alone to be strong. That sharing the burden makes it lighter, not heavier. And you've shown me that the past doesn't have to determine the future, Dahlia replied. That even the most hidden places can be found when the time is right. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the land in pristine white. But inside their cabin, warmth and love kept the cold at bay, a different kind of garden, growing in the heart of the American West. Spring brought new life to their homestead. The garden Dahlia had planned throughout winter burst into vibrant color, vegetables and herbs interspersed with flowers that attracted bees and butterflies. Wyatt had built a fence to keep cattle away, creating a protected haven reminiscent of her mountain sanctuary. The work was hard but satisfying. Wyatt rode out with the ranch hands most days, managing cattle and horses, while Dahlia divided her time between their growing homestead and helping Rebecca Garrett with the larger ranch operations. Her knowledge of medicinal plants had already saved one cowboy's infected arm and eased another's chronic cough, earning her respect throughout the valley. As summer approached, they received an unexpected letter, forwarded through several trading posts before reaching them. It was addressed simply to the lady gardener of the High Valley, but the contents were specific enough to find Dahlia. It's from a trader who used to visit my cabin, Dahlia explained as she read. He says the men who chased us were never seen again. The avalanche took them. She looked up at Wyatt, her expression complex. He also says something was found scattered across the high meadow. The gold, Wyatt guessed. Dahlia nodded. Word spread. There was a minor gold rush to the area, but most left disappointed after the obvious coins were collected. No one connected it to the Union paymaster theft from years ago. She folded the letter carefully. He says my garden is still there, overgrown but alive. The cabin stands empty. Wyatt sat beside her on their porch steps. Do you want to go back? Visit. She leaned against him, considering. Someday, perhaps. But not yet. Her hand drifted to her abdomen, a small smile playing on her lips. We have other gardens to tend first. Wyatt's eyes widened as he understood her meaning. Dahlia, are you? Her smile grew. Due in winter. Rebecca confirmed it yesterday. Joy unlike anything he'd ever known surged through Wyatt. He pulled Dahlia into his arms, laughing as he lifted her and spun her around. Careful, she protested, though she was laughing too. I'm in a delicate condition, or so Rebecca informs me. Wyatt set her down gently, cradling her face in his hands. I love you, he said simply. More than I ever thought possible. And I love you, Dahlia replied, her eyes bright with tears of happiness. My unexpected cowboy who found my hidden garden and gave me a world beyond it. As the sun set behind the distant mesas, casting golden light across their homestead, Wyatt Norton held his wife close, marveling at how completely his life had transformed. The man who once believed the frontier was no place for tenderness now knew better. In the harshest places, with the right companion, the most beautiful things could flourish. Like a secret garden in the mountains, like love in the Wild West, Their story had taken root and bloomed against all odds.